And then we got to the tag team title triple threat match. And this, thankfully, is the last of the match of the program. And this is the one you just referenced, Brian. They set it up last week. Starks and Hobbs versus Swerve and Lee versus the Hardley Boys. When the Hardley Boys were trying to set this match up to determine who the greatest tag team in wrestling is, that's when the people started chanting FTR, as in, here's who we think is the best, here's who we'd like to see, but they weren't involved.
You think they hear those chants when they go to bed at night? Because those weren't, we want to see you wrestle, FTR. That was, we prefer FTR to you, we're sick of you. Do you think they hear those chants when they close their eyes?
No, because I think they've got their Raycon wireless earbuds in, and they're not even a sponsor this week, folks, but it just came up. Listening to Sockface call their greatest PWG matches from Reseda or Cucamonga or wherever wherever the case. That's what the Hardley Boys listen to, is people talking about how great they are when they go to bed at night, because that's why they have all these dreams that they really are.
And of course, it wouldn't be a Hardley Boy match without the worst referee in the history of the business.
I was about to say, I wrote Knox referee, this will suck. Hobbs and Starks, again, look great physically. They look great as a team. They're starting to do tag team maneuvers. They just don't get a lot of opportunity to show it because you only see them wrestle every 3 months or so. I think I'm about over Keith Lee. When I just didn't know anything about him and just saw his size and the way he could move, I was thinking, yeah, I could do something with him. But then I started hearing his promos and I started hearing him talk. And then I started realizing that this is probably the best he's going to be because he's almost 40. And I'm like, Anyway, in this match, which you couldn't watch most of it because this was, again, the kind of match that the Hardley Boys and their school friends used to have out in the fucking barn in Reseda or Cucamonga or wherever they all played with their friends. It just over and over, shit, back and forth. Stuff doesn't make sense. People in the match disappear for lengthy periods of time for no reason otherwise than it's not their turn for the spotlight. And guys just do shit to each other over and over. There's no heel, there's no baby faces, there's no logic. Nick Hardley and Swerve did an extended cheerleading tumbling routine at the start, and then they did a deal where Ricky Starks got involved in this too. He and Nick held their opponent's hands and then walked the top rope into each other and then argued with each other, blah, blah, blah. At one point, because I was watching this, you know, the studio out back is torn up, doesn't have any drywall in it. So Stacy was upstairs in the bedroom watching television while I was watching this in the TV room. And she comes down to take Harley out right at the time that old Matt Hardley gave Ricky Starks and Swerve both a double Northern Lights suplex. And she just looked at it and just burst out laughing and blew snot and continued on outside with the dog. The average person who's not only been a wrestling fan for 30 years, but has actually been in the business, if they want to tell the truth, they may not do it out in public because they want these two little street urchins to get them a job. But to tell the truth, they laugh at the young bucks because the young bucks are fucking funny. Not intentionally, but they're fucking funny. And then somehow or another, they got Keith Lee and Powerhouse Hobbs, who are opponents, to do a double vertical suplex on old Matt Hardley. And boy, they put him down feet first, then ass, then whiplash. Then they did some more indie style shit and went to a break. Keith Lee made a big comeback. At least everybody fed him. Usually they don't bother to do that. Hobbs and Lee, everybody else disappeared besides Hobbs and Lee. And they did their big man stuff. And then at one point, Hobbs knocked Keith Lee off the buckle and hit a frog splash 2/3 of the way out in the middle of the ring and got a 2 count. That should have been the finish. If Hobbs can do that frog splash like that every time, he should never do it unless he's going to beat somebody with it. And that was, the people got a big pop, and you had some hope. Okay, Hobbs and Starks, out of the three of these teams, they should be the world champions. Well, it wasn't, and then everybody else in the match suddenly reappeared, and the moment was lost. And then, did you hear when Sockface, old excrement, said, the Young Bucks are one of the toughest tag teams in wrestling? That was a quote.
Look, he's their boy. The reason he's there is them. And there's been numerous comments the last month or so. Remember when Jim Ross said FTR may be the best in the business, and Excalibur couldn't even say that because he didn't want to upset the Young Bucks?
But couldn't he say one of the fastest, or one of the winningest, or one of the most agile, or
he's a dope.
Whatever.
He's a dope. He's a graphic artist wearing a mask. He's a dope.
There's these two undernourished, smarmy, nerdy, conniving little Christian Lilliputians standing in the ring next to fucking Hobbs. And he said, they're one of the toughest tag team. Tough? Fuck. So anyway, umpteen super kicks from the children. And then Hobbs bumps Knox. Not like you have to really anyway, but they did it. The Hardleys got one of the title belts, but Starks foiled them using it. Then Swerve got the belt, but then he dropped it on purpose because he didn't want to use it. But then Matt Hardley nut-shotted Swerve and hit everybody with one of the belts, and then covered Swerve, but that was a 2 count. So they can't do finishes because they do fuck finishes and then ruin them forevermore because people kick out of everything because they have to overdo it all. So then they hit Swerve with their shitty little video game knee lifts, but Starks made the save. And then Keith Lee and Swerve hit a bunch of moves, and then everybody hit a bunch of moves, and it all went to shit. And it way overstayed its welcome. And then they were going so long on time and overtime, my DVR froze again before the pinfall. I know what happened, and I'm about to reveal it, but they were down to the last 30 seconds of the show again. And Stacy said, you can set it for an extra 2 minutes. I said, if they don't care about doing their job, I don't care about going out of my way to do mine. But they put the belts on Lee and Swerve out of nowhere.
We said it on the show last week that wouldn't be surprised if Tony does that.
Instead of putting the belts on FTR on the next pay-per-view like they should have to finish up this program, because right now FTR, what tag team champions are they? Ring of Honor champions, right? Of a company that technically doesn't really exist anymore except in an LLC in Tony Khan's fucking portfolio.
Right, Ring of Honor tag champions, about to have a 2 out of 3 falls match with the Briscoes, which we will be watching.
Yes, that will be the rematch of the best tag team match of any company of the year.
They're also the IWGP tag team champions.
Which doesn't make a goddamn shit for anybody's business whatsoever.
And the AAA tag team champions.
Which doesn't make a goddamn shit for anybody's business whatsoever. AEW will still do the same business that they're doing right now, that FTR are the AAA champions or not. And AAA, I'm sure, probably will also. New Japan Pro Wrestling, if they're going to do the same business, I'm sure their fans would like to see FTR, actual Americans that can actually wrestle. But it won't make any difference to AEW's business that FTR are the New Japan champions. And, again, Ring of Honor, Tony owns it. It's dormant right now. They're doing a pay-per-view. FTR could make those belts mean something with the quality of their matches and their defenses and etc. But since we won't be seeing those on television, just on pay-per-view, for a company that technically doesn't exist anymore because Tony doesn't have the balls to get the Briscoes on his show, and or the fucking Hardley boys don't want that shit anywhere around them because it shames them and embarrasses them by comparison. So the only way to make it make sense for their business, for AEW's business, and to get this company with this television show over is to culminate FTR's winning the 3 belts that are meaningless in the overall scheme of things. The way the 3 belts mean something is aggregately all together. We've won this one, we've won that one, we've won the other one. We beat all those people. Now we're coming for the big one. And the showdown would be for all 4 belts. The real World Tag Team title, which would be the AEW, even though the AEW World Tag Team title is not over either because it's been held for so long by goofs. But in this instance, that would be the way to get the title, the tag team title over and the people holding it. We're going to have this fucking match for all 4 of these titles, including the big one. And then the Hardy Boys would be expected to do what was right for business and put over the babyface team that even all their fans are chanting for in the arenas. And that way FTR would have all 4 belts, including the one set of belts that's important in this environment, which is the AEW belts. And the other 3 belts look good in pictures, and they look good as a conglomerate of all these belts that the guys have won, but individually those titles mean nothing. It was a way to get to someone winning all 4 potential belts. But the Hardys couldn't have it. They can't stand that FTR is better than they are. They can't stand that the people have recognized that, and they can't stand that they're getting backlash, not just from me now, not just from the listeners of this show now, but from a lot of people all over wrestling fandom and Twitter and the internet that said, we're tired of these fucking comedy children. We'd like our talent to be serious, to make sense, and to look like stars.
You sound like some of the guys in the back.
Exactly. So instead of putting the belts on FTR on a big pay-per-view match, the big 2 out of the rubber match, it all fit. The rubber match. The babyface always wins in the end. All the titles on the line. The people chanting for FTR. The way that FTR is doing work to expand Tony's new projects, like Ring of Honor. It all made sense to have the rubber match, put the baby faces over and put all the belts on them. And Matt and Nikki, they're so insecure and they realize what the fuck's going on and they can't stand it. This was supposed to be their play toy, their company where they could get all their untalented cosplaying trampoline cowboy friends jobs. And now they're being seen through. So they had to swerve, no pun intended, the belts out of the way of FTR. What they ought to do, Matty and Nikki, they ought to call old Kenny, old Twinkle Toes, and they ought to put out a call to Reseda, to the barn out there, and they ought to find some more of their play friends that like to just wrestle until they get tired of doing moves. And that's what the pay-per-view match ought to have been. Put them all in the same match on the next pay-per-view. And put them all together so they can play with each other and stick fingers up each other's asses and grab each other's dicks and use invisible force fields and and hand grenades and all that stupid, phony bullshit that all of them and their friends used to do in PWG. And that way we could leave the rest of the pay-per-view for the real wrestlers trying to have real matches.
So what do you think they're going to really do on the pay-per-view? If they're not going to have the tag team title match with FTR, so that means FTR has to do something different. What do you think the Young Bucks will do?
Who not? Probably get a bunch of their friends together and have one of their little
It's got to be Kenny,
high spot matches,
right? If they're not going to wrestle
he's
FTR,
up, though. He'll never be the same again after all of his injuries that he suffered wrestling children.
You know what? He's piping off recently. We talked about it on the show. We embarrassed him when we talked about his stupidity and piping off on us. He's doing that for a reason. Watch him be at that pay-per-view. Watch it be the Bucks and him at that fucking pay-per-view.
You think he's trying to get some attention off of our audience and our reach because he's about to make his reappearance and everybody is pretty much not been calling for it because everybody's been happy that he's been gone and they didn't have to see him?
I think they should be worried. We've been talking on the show about FTR being the better tag team for 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is. Everyone else has caught up to us. Everyone else is now realizing, shit, Dax Harwood really is one of the best workers in the entire business.
Cash too, very underrated.
Absolutely. But people are realizing they're actually good at tag team wrestling. They don't need to have a referee that turns his back on all the rules. They can work a brilliant match that gets the entire room going within the confines of the traditional rules of professional wrestling. And the fans have caught up to it. The AEW fans let the Young Bucks know that they prefer FTR. And these guys are all real sensitive. Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega, the Bucks, Adam Page. These are the most sensitive people, and they can't deal with it. Adam Page couldn't deal with the fact that CM Punk was the star when he was the champion. Young Bucks can't deal with the fact that FTR are the better tag team, and everyone knows it now. Kenny Omega can't deal with the fact that everyone hasn't accepted he's the best wrestler on the planet. But I think the interesting tale will be in the next few years. I don't know if you're going to read about it in The Observer, but there are a lot of people who don't speak up about what they think about Omega and the Bucks because they're scared of any political fallback. That they'll be
and I got to be honest with you. I've been in the business for a long time, and I remember when, oh, yeah, you don't want to piss off Vince McMahon. Oh, yeah, you don't want to piss off Jim Barnett. Oh, yeah, you don't want to piss off Bill Watts. Oh, yeah, you don't want to piss off any interchangeable mover and shaker in the business. But I got to be honest with you, the day that the time came in the wrestling business where anybody would be fucking concerned with what Matt or Nick Hardley or Harpo McFingerfuck says, does, or thinks about them, those flaming fucking unmassing guild pussies, that's a fucking embarrassing thing to say. That anybody, politically, personally, or otherwise, would be concerned with what those fucking little dweebs have to think about anything.
You know as well as I do some of the behind-the-scenes shit that went on in Ring of Honor, and we've heard from people about what went on in New Japan with them, and we've heard from people with AEW about them. They're manipulators. They try to pretend like they're just, hey, we're just doing this. They're manipulators, trying to get them and their friends over and trying to hurt and hold back anyone who's not along with them for the ride. And the stories will come out. The stories about Omega are the most fascinating fucking stories. The stories about guys fighting with him in emails. There's so many Omega stories. I can't wait.
The word douchebag gets thrown around a lot.
A lot. Multiple people have called him a douchebag to us alone.
Brian, if only these people had someone to talk to run some of these things by before they go and say or do them in public. Maybe if the Hardley boys had called up BetterHelp and said, hey, do you think we really ought to pitch a fit and make Tony put our tag team title belts on these other guys instead of FTR because we're jealous? Maybe a licensed therapist at BetterHelp could have said, no, what you need to do is you need to just get over your inferiority feelings and do what's right for your business and your employer. Maybe that's what they would have said. Some way or another, they could have given good advice to bad actors. And folks, if you're not a bad actor or a bad wrestler, if you just have stress in your life, if you're burned out, if you need to take care of your brain, which, by the way, the rumor is, Brian, that you only get one brain for your entire life. You have to keep it. 95% of the people keep the same brain for their entire life. That's what I'm hearing. And how we take care of our minds affects how we experience life. So you got to keep your brain healthy. Like learning a new language, keep it nimble. That's like brain exercise, or taking power naps. Keep your brain rested, or BetterHelp online therapy. If you want to talk to somebody that can give you another viewpoint on what you're thinking about, you go to betterhelp.com, and they offer online therapy, video, phone sessions, live chat-only therapy sessions. You don't even have to get in front of a camera if you don't want to. More affordable than in-person therapy, and you can be matched up with a therapist in under 48 hours. Imagine if you could get everybody else that you need in your life in under 48 hours. Try getting a landscaper, by cracky. Anyway, and right now, our listeners are getting 10% off their first month services at BetterHelp. That's HELP. BetterHelp.com/JCE. BetterHelp.com/JCE. 10% off your first month services. I think I would even pay for the Hardly Boys first month services if they would just call and find somebody to talk to.
Do you think it would actually help them, though?
No, because you have to be willing to help yourself before anyone can help you. And the Hardly Boys are helpless.
But you can get help today with BetterHelp.
That's right. Who, me?
Anyone, including you.
I was talking to you.
Well, any of them, you or I.
Any of us.
Or together.
Except these dimwits, the Hardly Boys. You can't help them because they don't deserve it. But everybody else does.
That's
everybody needs a little help.
So go to BetterHelp, unless you're the Young Bucks.
Unless you're the Young Bucks, and then just live in misery. Just be miserable forever. We wish that upon you.